Hi there everyone, welcome to the latest live edition of my 10-minute moans, but the live ones tend to go on for a wee bit longer. So normally what I've been doing is I've been doing a normal sort of 10-minute moan with a topic and then going to the messages and any questions. But this time's a wee bit different. I've got a special guest for the first time and his name's Basil. If you're on Twitter and you've been in any spaces that I've been in on Twitter, you'll probably have had him as your host because he does a lot of them and I've been quite enjoying them. So Basil, how are you tonight?
I'm all right, mate. How are you, Craig?
You still shy?
Oh, don't tell me it's not coming through.
No, I can see you, but I thought you were going to put an avatar on and not your real face.
Sorry, I've just worked out what's going on there.
Aye. No,
yes.
Hello
everyone. This is my first time on a YouTube live, so I am a little bit nervous. Yeah.
Nervous? No, you shouldn't be. These are a good company, and there's a few of the names already that have been in a lot of them. So what we'll do is we'll just cover a couple of stories, and I'll watch your messages coming in. If you're going to ask us a question, guys, if you can put the double Q in capitals first, it just means if there's loads of comments, I can find them easier. So that'd be absolutely fantastic. And Hazel Appleyard is already annoying us. Hazel switched over from X, I think, especially for this. I don't know if she's allowed out the platform of X, but it's nice to see her getting herself out in the big bad world. So, what's the hot topics this weekend, Basil?
Well, I saw that news story earlier on of that young lad who was he goes to a private school and the NHS refused him treatment purely on the fact that he attends a private school. Now, this has got to be illegal. In fact, I'll state, money out that's illegal. This is illegal, right? You can't do this. But what it does go to show is just how much our NHS is taken over by activists. Taken over by, I would argue, like Marxists, communists, those kind of people. Sorry, I just put my phone on mute. And I was disgusted by it because this is a young lad who, again, are getting brought up in a world where we've got this two-tier criminal justice system. You might know something about. We've got a two-tier, country now, and hospitals are another one. So yeah, it's horrendous to see.
Aye, it's just I should have mentioned at the start. If you're watching on YouTube, if you go into the description, I put 2 links to Basil. One to his very successful Twitter feed, which is always rammed with news updates, and his new podcast, which is It's Only Politics, which he does with someone from Twitter Spaces called YC. How's that going on? How's that going for you, Basil?
It's going great. We've had a number of guests on. We've just done a podcast with yourself, obviously, Craig, but we're waiting because of obviously what's happened with yourself. We're going to wait till we put that one out. We've got to bide our time on that. But there's we've got, so we will get Craig on shortly. But there is we've done one with Rupert Law. We did one with Douglas Carswell just the other night, former UKIP MP. And we do a regular one every week. So if you like listening to politics podcasts, we do it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you can catch them on there every week. So yeah, it's good fun.
Yeah.
Listen, we don't like talking about politics, right?
No.
Well, the state of the country. We like talking about the state of the country. Yeah.
Aye, true. Now, I listened to the Rupert Lowe one. That was particularly eye-opening. That's a very honest man, very straight man. And I would urge people, if they only listen to one of your podcasts, was it fair to say that's probably one of the best so far?
It's the most listened to.
Because mine isn't out yet.
Yeah. Aye. Well, when the Craig Houston one comes out, the life story, that'll definitely take the top spot. Aye, Rupert's one of those people who I think his story resonates with people because regardless of what political side of the spectrum you're on, nobody likes what happened to him. And I think most people want a sense of decency in who runs the country. And so when you see what happened to him and with reform and stuff, I mean, look, I speak to reformers and, when you speak to them, it's just like, Jesus, You know what I mean? Like it's awful. It's absolutely awful. You know. So.
Yeah, and just to explain to people who like my crabbit tones, Basil and I spent a good few hours the other day on recording a podcast, two of them. The first one is more up to date and about current stuff that's going on in my life, but amazingly during the recording of that, I got a phone call and it was a lawyer saying, do me a wee favour, we've got a meeting next week, don't talk about your case at all until then. He knew fine well I'd said the basic things I had been arrested and stuff that's already out in the public domain. So just going to hold fire. So Basil's holding on to that one until we get the light from the legal guys, and then he's going to go with that. We've also done a longer one that went on for hours, which was talking about my old life with the Sons of Truth campaign, which was 10 years ago now, when Rangers had some dodgy board members and they were all trying to get rid of them. So there was a guy who wrote a book about me during that time, and Basil's done a podcast just going through the book for reference to keep the thing chronological, and it was quite an enjoyable experience because I'd forgot most of the stuff and reliving some of the crazy things that happened. The last time I decided to get up off my bum and do some campaigning, and unfortunately we're seeing history repeat itself with a lot of the stuff, and primarily ending up in police offices, although the last time I was in police offices 3 or 4 times, but we never get charged. So that's an interesting story. I'm looking forward to that coming out and listening with a bit of cringe with some of the stories for then. But when do you think that'll be out, Basil?
Yeah, I think it'll be out within the week. So give me a bit of time to get the editing done. It was rather long, and I've been very busy. So yeah, hopefully within a week.
It was a long one. So going back to the current affairs, this young boy that was told he couldn't get NHS care because he went to a private school. How do you justify that?
Well, you can't justify it, can you? But the thing, what we have to remember is we all know good people who work in the NHS, right? We all know doctors, nurses, porters, receptionists, etc. Right? We all know somebody who works in the NHS and does a good job, right? And is a good person. But I guarantee you, every single person we know in the NHS knows somebody who's also in the NHS who they would call an activist, right? A problem character, somebody who's more interested in the politics of what the NHS does than the service it provides. And we've seen it with, people being denied access to restaurants this week, a particular individual who was kicked out of a restaurant because of his politics. And you'll see that with people in hospitals too. And it's scary because we always thought that would be an area where that would never occur. At the end of the day, treatment you believe should be for all. I mean, you'll hear NHS doctors say things like, well, listen, I'm not interested in the legality of whether someone should be in the country. I just want to treat them. So if you're sat there going, well, I'd rather treat an illegal migrant than a citizen of this country who is happens to go to a private school, you've got problems. But this is the kind of people, unfortunately, who have infiltrated every public institution in our country. It's gone on for 20 odd years now, and we're seeing the results of it.
Our first question's in. Don't know how. This will probably be how the live will go. This is the sort of quality for Big Dazza. What's that on your head, ya maddie? Right, this is a very technical thing, mate. These are called headphones, right? And what they do is, if I have Basil on, his voice will come out the speakers, go into my microphone, and give you guys watching, you'll hear him like an echo. So as long as I've got these on, you just don't get annoyed with hearing Basil twice. My voice would be fine, but my guest's voice goes through it twice because I recorded last week a podcast remotely, and it was doing that. So these are a necessity so you guys can hear better, all right? And Hazel finds that a bit funny. So it's just bonkers, isn't it? That a basic thing that we're all entitled to in the NHS, and because of their perception of you, because you go to private school, there's a fair chance you're from a rich background. But I know a lot of people with working class backgrounds, middle class backgrounds, that just work their asses off to get their kids, what they felt would be a better education. So it's based on perception rather than even politics, is it not? And this is just getting absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at the people who've taken over these places, they're not even what you describe as maybe modern Labour Party types. These are people who are like far to the left of even them. These are Corbynistas. These are the people who are like Marxist, communists, the people who, again, when they were at university and stuff, were indoctrinated into cults, and they just take it out in the workplace now. I remember like 10, 15 years ago, chatting to people in the Labour Party who would say, yeah, we know the student, bodies are full of crazy people and stuff, but at the end of the day, it's never, they're going to grow out of it, right? And they didn't, they didn't grow up. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's a perfect example of that. A man who never grew up, never really paid for anything in life, always worked in the public sector, never took any risk, all that sort of stuff. So it was one of those things where, again, if you look at the state of our country, and people wonder why so many things don't work at the same time. It's because, unfortunately, like 2 decades now of just young people who've been indoctrinated into just madness, and they've came through and they've taken over the institutions, and you're seeing that today. I hope that boy, and I believe he will, he probably will get help from people, Free Speech Union or whatever, or whoever it is, will sue the NHS. And by the way, no one wins here, right? Nobody wins. The boy didn't get his treatment on time. It comes out of taxpayer pockets to pay for the suing of him. All down to lefty activists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what else has been headlines over the weekend?
Oh, well, do you want to talk about Elon and Trump, or do you want to talk about Zia and reform? Those were the two.
Let's do Elon and Trump first. Let's start with that one. What's your thoughts on it?
Well, look, it was never going to be a calm and considered White House, was it, with Trump in there? There was always going to be some craziness to take place, and Elon Musk doesn't help the matter, right? But I love them both. I think they're both great characters for different reasons. Elon Musk obviously I would argue, saved a lot of free speech in this country and in others because of, taking control of X and making sure that people have a voice again. Is it perfect? No, it's not, but it's never going to be. But the point is, compared to what we used to have on X and Twitter, it's fantastic to see that he's done that. And that's why people like Tommy Robinson and others have been able to get their word out about certain things that they couldn't before. So fair play to him. He tried to do the Doge thing. And you know what? I respect him for that as well. At the end of the day, you cannot look at the countries, and I include us in this, right? And you see the amount of debt this country has and America has and think, how is that sustainable? I mean, the bank would have called us in ages ago. It would stop lending us the money, And when you can print money, it's very serious. You can just print as much as you want, and inflation happens and all the rest of it, and it ruins people's lives. So Elon's basically said, look, I'm going to come in. I've got these guys. One of them was called Big Balls, which is hilarious, seeing the news say that. And they got this guy in, and a few of them, they looked through all the books. They went, right, we're going to strip out all the waste, and bang, all that was done. Fantastic. Next thing you know, this great, fantastic, what did he call it? The brilliant bill or something he wants to put through Trump. So this is his spending bill for the year. And he just wasted all the cash that Elon saved. So Elon wasn't happy. He threw his toys. I mean, let's be honest, Elon's not the person who's like calm and considered in these situations. So immediately he's on X typing out, this guy's a fucking prick and all the rest of it. And Trump's obviously gone back at him and said, he's a disgrace, and it's just craziness, right? And embarrassing as well, because again, who wins, right? It's basically the liberal left, right? Their enemies win, right? Their opponents win, right? So it's not good for either of them. And then obviously accumulated in. Are we allowed to say what the worst one was? The island. Are we allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, correct.
Okay. Well, it accumulated in Trump's.
The worst thing can happen is I lose my YouTube channel. So,
well, at the moment, I'm just wondering that this clip might appear in court. You never guess what else he's been talking about. No, what accumulated in Elon saying that Trump was in the Epstein files, right? And I was like, oh, everyone went, holy crap, And again, look, day and a half's gone by. They've obviously had a chat. Yeah. Both sides have deleted the tweets. Now, look, deleting tweets, what does it do? Once it's up there, it's there forever, right? Mm-hmm. So, the damage has been done in some respects. But the truth of the matter is that you've got this guy who was brought in, Elon Musk, to do a job, to save a load of money, right? To fix, let's look at it if it was us, right? And someone brought you in to fix a business. And you went, you know what? I fixed it, or I've got it way down. You're doing so much better. Your overheads are down. Everything's looking a lot good. And then you go, brilliant. That means I can just go and spend and blow it all, you'd be annoyed too.
Yeah. See this whole Epstein files lists, right? I kind of think they might have played a blinder here, because, and it's either by accident or design. If it's by design, the two of them are actually far more intelligent than anybody's willing to give them readings of. Because what I've got now is you've got the other side suddenly shouting, release the Epstein list. So you know, the right of centre in America were wanting them out from day one. Now the left of centre are thinking, well, if Trump's on it, we want them out now. And everybody's shouting to get the Epstein list out, which, and redacted. So if that's the result we get, who's to say this party, it just wasn't a really clever bit of a bluff? And I kind of hope it was. It was fantastic. And there's also, you mentioned that there's both parties are sort of starting to delete tweets and stuff. They're not the only political figures this weekend that's deleting stuff. But before we go on to that, I just want to show a couple of the messages. Preston journalist, those that don't know who Preston is, I'd be shocked and stunned, because if you like my stuff, you'll love his stuff. He's a wee bit younger than me, and Silver Fox and Neil, who are now we've been joined by Andy the cabbie now. We're in a wee WhatsApp group, we chat often. So he's saying, everyone who believes in free speech should stand with Craig. I do appreciate that, Preston, and you guys have been very supportive since I was taken into a police cell a week past on Friday. So if you like the sort of stuff that I can, you want, if you have something a wee bit more youthful than this face, click on Preston. You'll see his in the comments. Click on his icon, and it'll follow you over there. I've just deleted and banned somebody for commenting. I don't know if you've seen it or not, Basil. I hope you didn't, but just to let you know that the gun platoon from X have followed you over here as well. So thanks for tuning in, guys.
No, the comments are flying past, so I'm not saying anything. But listen, you've got to remember that for every 1,000 fans you make, there's always somebody who hates you. So yeah.
So Robert McNeil's asking, have any of you folks been looking into SDB policies? Well, obviously I have, right? Because in the same week as being arrested, it actually happened before I was arrested. I was made the SDP leader in Scotland, and we were just putting together the communications to let our members know first and foremost, and then to the general public view of the website. So that was happening. That taking place, the actual rubber stamping of that appointment. So you're like a lot of parties, Basil, and you see good and bad in most of them. But to save me doing the sales pitch, what's the sort of 3 headline policies that you see in the SDP that you like?
Right. Oh, I wasn't expecting this question. Right. So headline policies. I'll have to cast me. Well, one that always sticks out to me is the SDP, and I'm just to be clear, by the way, I'm not actually a member of any political party at the moment, but I in the past I have supported the SDP a lot, and the reason why is because I genuinely think that we've actually got the deputy leader of the SDP, Hilary Salt, coming on my podcast, and It's Only Politics in a couple of weeks' time. And the reason why I like them so much is because they do get a lot of things. They do talk about a lot of things that other parties are just not talking about. And one of them is the family, right? Now, if you look at the demographics of this country, we're in bad shape, right? Young adults are not having children like they used to. And there's lots of reasons for that. They can't get a house early enough. They can't get settled down. They both have to work, all sorts of hours to get, stuff done. And it's a nightmare. So the policy around saving tax money, I think is really good, and sharing it between. So, if usually it would be the woman, if you had a child or whatever, takes time off work or anything like that, the tax saving that she would usually get from work and goes to the other partner as well, and vice versa. That's a great one. I love the house building plans. I really believe that one of the biggest mistakes we had in this country was when Margaret Thatcher gave everyone the right to buy, which, by the way, is not a bad thing, right? I like the idea of people being given the opportunity to buy their council house. Unfortunately, she didn't stipulate that the councils had to spend the money they made on building new homes, and the councils just spaffed it up the wall on all sorts. Some councils didn't, but an awful lot did. So we didn't build enough houses. So I love the idea that they basically are going to institute a public housing scheme again, which I think would be really important in solving that first issue as well, of just getting people on the property. You know, you don't need a big fancy house as your first house. You just need something that can be your home. And I think that would be great for people as well. And then the final one I'd have to say is the immigration issue. I mean, there's so. I wish this to me is just common sense, right? I shouldn't be praising a party for saying we'll have no illegal immigrants in this country. They're illegal, illegal immigrants. I'm not talking about legal ones, right? We can have a debate about who can legally be here, but if you're an illegal immigrant, come on. You know what I mean? That should just be standard. You're not allowed. And yet the SDP are one of the very few parties that will turn around and say, listen, no illegal immigrants will even set foot in the United Kingdom. Because I think the plan is Ascension Island, right? And send them off to there, middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And that's great for me, because I tell you what, you send 20 of them off, they'll tell all their pals, and the boats will stop overnight.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest policies that I put a shine to. Send them to, because I think it would be a great deterrent. And I also think Rwanda would have been a great deterrent. But civil servants and politicians decided that was a particularly bad idea. You don't have the same excuses they gave for not supporting that. It was a third-party country. We own the Ascension Islands, and you ship even a couple of 3 plane loads out there. Even word will get about, and it's that should be a deterrent. People will just say, well, France is maybe suddenly a better option than jumping in a boat and paying a guy £5,000 to get me there. So hopefully, that is something that even other parties consider and say, look, we need, if we put a deterrent in place to make Britain less attractive, then they'll come here in the first place. And then we can start looking at the ones already here illegally. And I don't think we actually need to change many laws. You break a law, it's quite simple. You broke a law. What we need to start doing is looking at the loopholes, where you have endless appeal, and the stupid decisions we hear where due to ECHR, the European Convention of Human Rights laws, and all these lawyers that have created an industry that defend people on that basis, say stupid ones like, my personal favourite was the Albanian guy that was found with £250,000 under his bed, and they were wanting to deport him, and the court decided that they couldn't, because his lawyer successfully argued that one of the things, his son preferred the chicken nuggets in the UK to the ones in Albania.
Yeah.
And he just goes, just stop it.
By the way, I'll give the SDP credit on that as well, right? I've never seen a political party reform anybody, right, who, and this is UK, all of them, right? None of them's actually getting this right, and the SDP are the only ones who I've seen so far that I'm aware of that's got it bang on correct. To fix the migration problem, we don't just need to leave the ECHR. We need to scrap the Human Rights Act 1998, but we also need to leave the 1951 Refugee Convention of the UN, right?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is I've just seen a comment fly up there from, who was it, Jamie Jameson, saying, send them all back to France. It's real, not complicated. Jamie, I know you'd think it wouldn't be complicated, right? Even if we scrap all those laws, right, what will then happen is you'll get us pushing them back to France, and France will be pushing them back to us. Now, ultimately, who's going to lose in that situation? Well, it's going to be us, because if they want to come here, France are not going to have to force them into the boats. They're just going to let them go, right? So the real thing is we need to stop them to wanting to come here. And the best way you can do with that is essentially, listen, like, you're not coming into the country, you're going in the middle of the Atlantic. It's your choice, you know?
Yeah. It's dead simple. The only legal way to come into the United Kingdom is through a port of entry. So if you don't do that, you broke the law. Off you pop, you're going to Ascension. And if you do need to claim asylum, then let's put a process in that can get genuine people with genuine issues. And the one that I always use as an example of that is the Afghan interpreters that were over there working with our armed forces, to interpret for them. And when we were withdrawn from Afghan, they were rounding up their families and slaughtering them. So, these people are going to lose their life. That's not a bad thing they've done. And, I think they did, things like that. And there's a few different, obviously, people war-torn places and stuff. If we can help people, we can, but we can't help them to the tune of 1.2 million every year coming in. We need to get the immigration down. And some people's idea is to get it down to zero. Some is to get it down to a manageable amount. And I think the figures pre-1990s, where we had about 50,000, then that's probably fine, and that allows us to bring in people. If we get some real clever people and genuine skill shortages, or people want to come to this country with big pots of money, and I use Elon Musk. If we had zero immigration and somebody like Elon Musk said, look, I fancy building a Tesla battery plant in Inverclyde, and I want to buy a castle over in Rossi, what are we to say no to that?
Yeah.
So you kind of need to have some, I believe. I think the zero is a bit, you're restricting what you can do at that. So having a sort of target of, certainly under the 100,000, it seems sensible to me. But one of the other things that attracted me was it was jumping off the page when I was reading it, was the stuff for the ex-armed forces. Twofold. One, when you come out of the armed forces, if you're qualified for a job in the public sector, then you go to the front of the queue. So if you come out the REME, for example, as a fully trained mechanic, and your local council needs a mechanic, and you want that job, you fancy that job, then you'll go to the front of the queue, and as long as you've got the experience needed, which you would probably imagine you would have coming out the REME, then you pop, and things like that. And I think that was great. And the other thing is that our ex-armed forces, when it comes to public housing, then again they go to the front of the queue. So those two plus Ascension were the ones that sort of caught my eye. So I don't want to bore people to death and make it the let's join the SDP show, but if you are interested, there's the website there, easy to remember, sdp.org.uk. That'll take you on, have a look at the policies, and if you think it is a party for you, then great. I don't just join it because you think I'm an all right guy. I've said to everybody that I know that said, I think I'll go and join the SDP, and say, well, go and check the policies first, because me being all right and your politics being different to theirs is possible. So I liked it. Going on, have a look at it, and £3 a month and £2 in certain instances to become a member, and then we can all start running to Holyrood and try and get some SDP folk into that horrific building. Now, mentioned before we started that wee sales pitch here, Basil, about other politicians and people in politics deleting tweets over the weekend.
Come on,
Forum, we've been at it again, been doing some crazy things.
The drama that keeps on never ends, does it? It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
Reform is like a soap opera for politicians. It's just there's a story and a story and a story. So Zia Yousaf started off with Putin going into Westminster and asking First Minister's questions: should we ban the burqa? If I get into the chronological order, just shout, Basil. Then Zia Yousaf came out and said, well, that's no party policy. Lee Anderson, who's the party whip, had come out in support of Sarah Putin, and this was all getting played out on Twitter. Who was the guy that put out saying they've been popping corks? So then Zia Yousaf wrapped it, right? So he's resigned. He threw his towel in. He put a tweet out telling everybody he was off ski. And there was some guy in the party or close to the party who suggested that the headquarters at the Forum will be popping champagne bottles tonight. That was his words. And then Yousaf changed his mind, and suddenly everything was cool again. And the guy with the bottles was suddenly, oh, it's great to see Zia back, And you're like, come on, just.
It's Aaron Banks, yeah. Aaron Banks, who stood for them, he stood for them for the mayor of southwest England, like the Bristol area. But Aaron's tipped to be the next chair of Reform. He's been a Nigel backer for decades. He's obviously been, he's sponsored him, given him loads of money and all that. You know what I mean? And basically, Aaron turned around. I've got the tweet. Yeah, Aaron turned around and said, astonishing that everyone thinks they are responsible for the meteoric. By the way, this is in response to Zia, right? So Zia's read this. Zia knows what's been said here. He's put astonishing that everyone thinks they are responsible for the meteoric reform rise. As the old saying goes, success has many fathers and failure an orphan. Zia worked very hard but struggled with relationships and people. The corks will be popping in Party HQ this evening. Reform will power on. And then 2 days later, he comes back. Makes sense to focus on Doge and tech without the burden of the operation of expect big things to come. It's just, I mean, look, what's hilarious is, I mean, did you see Calvin McKenzie as well? He got caught with it as well. Did you see that one?
No.
Oh, cracking! Calvin McKenzie's he's a Reform. I don't know if he's donated to Reform, but he's obviously Calvin used to run the Sun newspaper. He's a massive media mogul, big Reform supporter. So Calvin McKenzie, a couple of days ago, put Zia Yousaf is no loss. making untrue allegations against Rupert Law was the last straw. Pleased to see him go. Reform will be stronger. 2 days later. Warm to see Zia Youssef for having the humility to recognise his mistake and the graciousness of Nigel Farage to embrace it. Musk and Trump would do well to learn from their cousins across the pond. I mean, it's a laughing stock, right? And the thing when you see that, I mean, what's hilarious is you've seen Sarah Portran come out today and she's like, oh, it's great to have my friend back. And, you know, they're all kind of, Richard Tice as well, but it's fantastic to have him back. The truth is, right, they've all now got to pretend that nobody posted those horrible things about Zia. And he's got to pretend he never saw them. You know what I mean? And they've just deleted them all and move on. Yeah.
See the one that I think is most similar to me as a person, and I had him in real high esteem. It was actually one of the things that inspired me to get involved in politics and potentially get elected, and that's Lee Anderson. Because I just saw a normal geezer talking in a normal language, surrounded by a load of people that are a bit bonkers. And then obviously that it's changed parties a few times. And to be fair, he's done a few things over the last 6 months that I'm like, I wish I had a better role model now. But anyway, that's fact. That'll never change, that he was an inspiration for me to get involved in the first place, regardless of, opinion changes. Has he come out and said anything since the reversal here? Because you're obviously your chapter on Twitter.
Oh, Lee,
no,
sorry, Lee. No,
Lee Anderson,
Lee just said welcome back. He again was just very. To be fair, Lee never really slammed into him when he left. He was very magnanimous about it. But you've got to remember, right, and this is what I said at the time, when you see these people, what you're seeing with reform, look, again, slagging off reform, it's fun. It's fun to slag off all the parties, right, because they're all terrible for different reasons, right? But when I go after reform, a lot of people get touchy thinking that I'm doing this because I don't want reform to succeed. No, I want reform to be better, right? I want them to be better for this country. But the problem they've got is that what we are now witnessing is whenever reform says something, we know it's not true. So what I mean by that is it doesn't just mean it's a pure lie. What I mean is they have a front they go out to the public with, and then what goes on behind the scenes is clearly worse, right? So Lee Anderson turned around and said, it's a welcome back, Zia Youssef. I spoke with Zia earlier to welcome him back home. There will be some very twitchy snouts at local authorities again, as this man and his Doge team will root out your wasteful spending and wastefulness. Right. If you are to believe what was said behind the scenes at Reform, which Andrew Pearce, the GB News presenter, did an article about, saying Reform HQ were overjoyed that Zia had gone. Nobody likes him. I speak to people at branch level. They all hate him. So what, Lee Anderson's going to be the odd one out who sat there going, he's a great guy? Of course not. The truth of the matter is, Zia Youssef had 50% of because remember, Reform's not just a party, everyone. It's a business too. And Zia Youssef owned 50% of the shares, right? He also knows where all the bodies are buried. That's a metaphor, obviously. But what I mean is he knows secrets. He'll know about incidents where things have happened. Nigel will have said stuff behind the scenes he doesn't want to get out there in public. And they don't want to end on bad terms. Or Zia Youssef can just turn around and say, well, I've decided to write this whole horrible tale in the papers. See what you think of it. So they have to bring him back into the fold. And that's why you're seeing loads of people going, hi, Zia, we love you. Welcome. Oh, fantastic to have you back. I was so gutted that you left. That's what they've got to do.
Aye, and I'm the same. I think it's probable that if they're not the next government in the United Kingdom, I would imagine there'll be a very strong opposition. At worst, I think that it's more likely that they'll be in power, and I just want them to be better than they are, because there's no point in replacing something with something else. It just tells lies and fabricates things and lives off perception, because we've had that for the last 20 odd years. And if they are going to be a real change, then let's be a real change. That would be great. And I get some stick. Obviously, I'm a unionist, and a lot of unionists are backing reform, and that's great. And when I speak out about them, I do get some jip because of it, and go, well, I just want them to be better. And they're not hold them accountable. If I turn a blind eye and not talk about it when they do things that are evidently wrong. So kind of that's where. Any other stories before I go to the questions and the messages, Basil? Anything else over the weekend that's caught your attention?
Not really.
Say
I think
yes.
that was enough.
Please say yes, and that'll give me some time to read these messages.
Well, I was just going to actually pick up on a comment of Yvonne Kern sent in. She went, "I want a party where all members have the right to vote on policies that are then brought to the House." Right. So, Yvonne, right, you make a great point. Right. The truth is, most people, Nigel Farage has been saying for the longest time that Reform is a democratic party. It isn't. Right, it's not democratic, right? He now listen, it doesn't matter whether you think it should be democratic or not. That's irrelevant, right? The point is, why is the leader of a party lying to its members, right? I don't understand this. And again, the people who turn around and say you're criticising Reform too much, and I'm like, did you just lose all of your standards when Reform came along? Anything they do that you would have criticised the Tories for or Labour for, you're supposed to criticise them too. And that's a basic thing for me, So I agree with you, Yvonne. The reason why we have all this controversy over whether Nigel wants to deport all illegal migrants. By the way, just remember, on the 24th of April, Nigel said, in 3 to 4 weeks' time, we will have a policy document that outlines how we're going to deport all illegal migrants, right? It's now been 45 days since then, right? So I said at the time, I don't think we'll ever see that policy document. And 45 days later, we still haven't seen it. But the reason why you don't get to see it and the reason why these things don't happen is because he's not answerable to anybody, right? So if it was a Democratic Party and it was like members get a vote, well, you'd have a vote on whether Rupert Lowe had to go. You would have had a vote on whether you should get rid of all illegal migrants. You would have had a vote on who your chairman should be. That's a normal one in parties. It wouldn't have been Zia Youssef appointed. You would have voted for who you wanted it to be. And you would have had a vote for the leader as well, right? And these are things that are normal in political parties. But for some reason, in Reform, it's different, and everybody just has to accept it. And this is why, and I saw another comment there. I can't remember who it was who posted, but it caught my eye, where they said, I joined Reform, and then I cancelled quite quickly afterwards. And you've got to remember, that's another weird thing about this party. When you sign up to most parties, right, and you say that you're going to cancel them, you cancel and you come off the membership roll. With Reform, you don't, right? They keep you on for the full year. You have to wait until your membership cycle doesn't renew. And then what we have seen in recent weeks, I posted a couple of them on Twitter, people have been saying, I cancelled with Reform, but my direct debit came out. So what's going on there? That's illegal too, right? So there's all these things that keep going on, and it just builds up a kind of image of, I cannot trust you. I just can't. And I wish I could, but the problems are there for all to see. So,
I'll almost scan my way down all the comments to pull out the questions. I can highlight them so that they put them at the side for me. So, just on that, back to the Trump thing, there was just a couple of things I've seen written about him. Can you clarify something, Basil? You and I got friendly through you being a ex-space host, and we went through some times we was seemed to be on them for 12, 13 hours a day at times, especially through the election and stuff. And when I said I was going to start getting into Holyrood, and originally I was going to stand as an independent, and people were rightly starting to ask me questions, what would you do? Can you remember before the American presidential election and before Trump won it and before they launched this Doge, who said that they would do the exact same thing in the Scottish Parliament?
You did.
Yeah. So, and I think it's fantastic because somebody said, well, what can you do? And I said, well, from there myself, as I was going to be standing as an independent at the time, or even, if the SDP managed to get 5 or 10 people in, and that would be great, or still relatively small number. What can you do? And I was like, great, you should be asking questions like that. And one of the first things I said was get under the bonnet and look at where we're wasting money. Save us money and utilise that money. And stop just putting taxes up, whether it's the income tax that we get charged more in Scotland than anywhere else in the UK, or all these stealth taxes that we have that we don't really, notice, but they're there. And if we need more money for something, let's say it was drug rehabilitation, which would be quite nice, seeing as we don't offer any, yet we have the highest drug death rates in Europe. Then finding the money, I understand, can be hard. But if we can save it through useless wastage, through other means, then, and that's kind of what Doge is all about, or should have been all about. Now Trump appears to just want to waste the money that they've saved. So it kind of, as long as I'm sitting to listen to you explaining that, and I'm thinking, well, it depends on what Trump's wanting to spend it on, right? Would depend on whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But that's kind of where I was with this whole wastage by government, and I think Holyrood will be no different to any other Parliament government out there. So we're just going to go to the questions, and it's some of the stuff I've pulled aside, the messages. And there's been loads of messages, guys. So thanks very much for that. I do apologise if I can't get through all of them, but I've pulled 18 of them out, so we'll quickly crack on through them. First thing, how long's a list of good lawyers queuing up to help you, Craig, with I wouldn't say charges you're facing? To be honest, I have had a few people come to me. One of them, some of them have been lawyers, and I spoke to the Free Speech Union at length, and they've been very, very supportive up to this point. They've offered me a lot of things. I've got a KC who's going to help me, and I've got a lawyer to go and meet at the start of this week. It's not Monday, but once that's done, I think I'll be able to be in a position that I can I'll have a better understanding of what I can't talk about as far as the case is concerned, but a far better idea of what I'm doing financially, because we've got a quote to give me the best defence, and if the worst case scenario it was to go to court, and you're talking about 30, 40 grand. And I obviously don't get that. If I had that, I might have better earphones than these on. So that I think is going to be underwritten, and I'll hopefully be able to talk more about that next week. So Stephen, thanks for asking that and your concern for me. Next one, wow, headphones, how modern, unique. I think they'll catch on. They're terrible. I hate them. But do you know what I think's worse? Scotland Scorpio, see the wee plug-in bud things. I've got a few pair of them. I hate them. So I think I'm going big bins. I borrowed these off my better half. So she's not too happy that I'm stretching them new earphones for her getting and doing her 10,000 steps a day. But I'll probably need to invest in a proper pair of these because they're better than the buds. How's it possible for a mouse to use a computer? Well, I think that one's aimed at Basil. And it's quite nice that you refer to him as a mouse, Hazel, because most people that transfer over from Twitter, some of them call him a rat. So how do you use a computer?
Right, so I've got Hazel giving me grief and you giving me grief. What was the point in coming on YouTube? Yeah. I could have stayed on Twitter if I wanted this.
Yeah, get enough politics on Twitter.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No problem. Headphones are for people with big hair, man. Aye, well, obviously not. But I take your point there, Rob. But you look like a Scottish Mickey Mouse gang, Craig. I don't know if that's me with the ears or having a mouse as a guest. I don't know where that's going, James, but I take it you're having a right pop at me. So thanks for that. Big Dazza, he's already been having pops at me. He's having another one. Thought you were one of the new Teletubbies. Hoosty woosty. Aye, at least I'm brave enough to put my picture and my face out there, Dazza. Right? That's all I'm saying. And listen, I'm no Brad Pitt. I totally get that, right? But you're probably more a Jeff Gates type than a Brad Pitt type. All right. Good point here by Jacqueline Watt. Private school parents probably had paid more into the tax system. Well, they have, yeah. And also, they've saved the rest of us the money that it would cost to educate their kid. And that school that they went to has created jobs and teachers and stuff and things that the school will buy that they pay taxes on and generate money that people pay PAYE. So yeah, that whole system of private schools will put a lot of money in. And the people who are doing it, they're not, as I said earlier, they're not rich. I know people, working class people, have just worked particularly hard to try and get their children as best a start as possible, in their opinion. And so everybody that pays for a kid to go to schools earning money somewhere and putting it into the coffers. So it's a great point. That's Jacqueline again. You can tell I'm not great at this. Preston's came back. Never heard Basil speak before. Great page on Twitter. Well, yeah, Preston, and the reason I know Basil is just initially through Twitter Spaces, and there's something that I would suggest, Preston, that you'd be good at as well. So if you fancy, go into Twitter, follow Basil, and anytime you see him pop in a space or me in a space, fire in, come on in. They're good places. There's some crackpots in them, right? But you can figure that out for yourself. You don't need to go through the good guy W word with that. And you get involved. They're good, and for people like yourself, you're intellectual lad with good opinions in politics. I would imagine you would enjoy them, and then you would hear his dulcet tones over there. Here's a question. People who send their kids to yeah, it's the same point as Jacqueline. Basically, they have the same rights as everyone else. There seems to be a sort of theme there. Now, we've got a real special comment from Stuart Corbett, OBE, nonetheless. Trump cut all ties with Epstein when he was convicted the first time. What's everyone else's excuse, including Musk? That's a fair point. Sign a petition. Just Google Stop Financial and Other Support for Asylum Seekers petition, or go to the UK Parliament website.
Petition website. It's got over 200,000 signatures within about 3 days. So yeah, it's one of those petitions that have really taken off. People are in big supporting of it, and absolutely fantastic to see. It's up to there. Someone just posted it's up to 335,000 now. So yeah, look, people are so fed up with how this country's been ran for so long now, and it's not just symptomatic of one particular party, because we've had Holyrood, we've got the Senate in Wales, everywhere in this country people are sat there going, this is not working, right? So you've had Labour running Wales for 14 years, we had the Tories running the UK as a whole, but obviously they had full control over England, and you had the SNP in Scotland, and everywhere went crap. So it goes to show that something is fundamentally rotting at the heart of our society. And I tell you what, when you've got Labour, the Tories and the SNP all agreeing on mass uncontrolled immigration, well, that goes to show you one of the big problems.
Yeah, they're bonkers, right? Tech Reality, he's a name that I recognise. I think he's been in every live I've done. Are any of you going to the silent protest in Edinburgh this Friday at 1400 hours, organised by Jim's organisation? Or if not going, you're going to do anything on it once it happens? I have arranged to go through there, and the only thing that will stop me, Tech, is if I have anything from my own case. I've got an initial meeting before that with my lawyer, but I don't really know what's happening after that. And obviously, that's kind of got to take first in anything that I do over the next, hopefully, short while. But yeah, I plan to go there, and they're all pals of Twitter. If you've switched over for Twitter in here, Kev the Ranter, The Truth. I'm picking him up in Livingston with hopefully a few of his pals, and we'll be through there. It's basically an organisation for, strangely enough, men who have been wrongfully prosecuted by their judiciary in Scotland. So yeah, hopefully be there and show my support. And if I can't be there, it doesn't mean I don't support you. I'll do whatever I can to give these guys a platform going forward. What's the SDP's position in net zero push? Very, very simple. Should we put bad things into our atmosphere? Well, no, if we can help it. But should we try and get to a net zero position and completely ignore industry? No, we shouldn't. So it's like most SDP policies. It's common sense and logic, right? Remember, we had the CFC problem because we were all spraying aerosols for years, so we kind of cut back that. It kind of helped, right? But it didn't cost anybody their job. It didn't cost any countries or industries, so we kind of do that. Oh, my battery's low. I might be losing you soon. I don't know, just check. I might need to go and plug this thing in. I've got 10%, should get to the end of the show. So it's kind of common sense. So it's like, yeah, if we can, put less pollutants in the air, that makes sense. But we don't just bin our coal and all our industries because of it. And as far as energy, the STB quite like the idea of nuclear as a good, cheap, reliable and responsible energy source that could make a big difference to the United Kingdom. Jackie Glenn, did you know there was a council election in Edinburgh? I didn't, Jackie. Maybe look into that, see if there's any of our members in the East fancy a wee shot of being a councillor. Didn't get any flyers for Dawn Hamilton for the SDP. You didn't, John, because when that by-election came a thing, we were still going through the process of, doing the things that had to do to end up with a leader that was me. So it kind of caught us a bit soon. If we even had another month at that, we'd have probably had some activity in the area. So I do apologise, but it just wasn't doable in the time scale. Could you people Britain legally stand with RK Junior against the WEF? Aye, I think so. I don't know, but I would need to look into it. Do you guys think Britain needs to adopt Poland's new law of borders regarding shooting illegal immigrants to deter them? No, I just think we just don't accept them, and that should be a deterrent, to be honest with you. Sorry to ask, I was late tuning in. Who's speaking? This is Basil from Twitter, all that jazz. And if you're going to put in the description, you've got links to his podcast that he does and his Twitter feed. I'm down to 7% battery life, so I'm going to start talking really fast. Would the SPDP be looking into corruption in councils, etc.? Is there any more news in the missing McVitie's money, for example? Yeah, I mean, my whole thing about when we start to putting campaigns together for Holyrood will be about anti-corruption. I just won't accept it, and that regardless of whether the SDP Scotland councillors going forward or MSPs going forward. That will be the sort of ticket we'll be riding on. And what I'm hopefully going to do as well, we've got over 100. You told me the figure ages ago, Basil, was about 180 independent councillors in Scotland, and I would like to talk to ones that So I would like to talk to those that have got the same principles as myself, same ethos as a party, and agree. And if we can find some that have got good, it's good connection there, then let's do it. Let's get some councillors on before council elections, and then try and get some of our members to put their head above the parapet when we have council elections. What would Reform need to do to convince Basil to become a member? Great question. Well done, Hazel. Right into him there.
They'd have to. Well, look, they'd have to become democratic, without a doubt. They'd have to hold elections for the people who are at the top of the party and for some of the policies. They would also have to address the issues around their membership numbers so that people knew the truth of what was going on there. But the biggest one for me, without a doubt, would be that they'd have to talk about what happened with Rupert Law and say that, and address how that came about and why a man who simply spoke out against what he thought was what all Reform members wanted, right, which was to deport all legal migrants, ended up getting the police around his house, and they were trying to get him convicted of dangerous assault. I mean, this to me, it was one of the most egregious attempts at lawfare I've ever seen in my life, and I thought it was frankly disgusting. Would I ever? By the way, just to be clear, I never.
I might have seen a worse one.
Well, to be fair, but no, we can't talk about that one yet. I just want to say that I've never said that I would never vote Reform, right? Look, when it comes down to election time, I always vote for the least worst option, right? And I vote for them because if Reform's the least worst option on the day, I'll be voting for them. But we've got a long way until 2029. Obviously, in Scotland, you've got a year before your election in 2026. And at the end of the day, what I want is to see Reform do better. Unfortunately, they've done terrible so far. They've been such a letdown. And the biggest one, again, Stephen Edgerton interview, if anyone saw it, when Nigel turned around and said, I do not want to go in the direction of deporting all illegal migrants. Well, I'm sorry, Nigel, that's your bread and butter. That was what Reform was invented for, to solve this problem. So Hazel, could I become a Reform member one day? Yeah, but they'd have to do a hell of a lot of soul searching, I think, first.
Right, I'm down to 6% battery. My plugs are way over there. I couldn't.
Is that Craig gone? You just left with me. Am I in control now? I guess I'll keep talking then while Craig sorts out his battery. So there was a few chats that Craig put in there, which I'll have a look at. Let's have a look. Speaking. Oh, that was the last question there, was from Hazel. So I'll go back to the ones that are in the normal chat. Can you ask or investigate these contrails in the sky, Craig? Mate, the contrail chat, right? Me and Craig have had chats in spaces before, right? If you catch us late at night, we do conspiracy theory chats, right? And they just go crazy, and they're great fun, right? And Craig loves a good conspiracy theory to talk about. I think they're hilarious, right? I believe in some of them. I don't believe in others. The contrail one, I'm not too sure about, right? Because I've seen some pretty obvious explanations of why those happen. So I'm not too sure, but I'm always willing to learn. Here we go. Keep going through until I see the QQs. I'm just looking for them. Craig, I've just been running the show while you were away, mate. We can't hear you. You're on silent. Now that he's gone, can you talk about the bad things, TP? Mousy, you're the boss. Let's steal some cheese. Thank you very much. Voting reform gives people hope. So let's have some light in the dark days. Look, the voting reform thing. Listen, Craig, he's talking away. He can't hear us, and he's no one. Craig, no one can hear you. The reform thing. Look, for me, I want anybody to have a bit of hope, right? I do. But at the end of the day, there is a major problem in this country, which is not just the policies of the parties that have been in charge, right? It's the quality of the politicians, right? And that's been a genuine. I haven't muted him, by the way. Craig's got a connection issue. I don't know what's going on, right? But there's a genuine. I don't know, but they can all hear me. Jimmy, bye now. I see you later, everyone. Bye bye.